Welcome to Hidden History Stories from the Secret City. I'm Keith McDaniel, along with my co-host Ray Smith. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, Keith. On the 100th episode of Hidden History Stories from the Secret City. Did you ever
Who
think
would have
we would
thunk
get
it?
this far? Who would have thunk it? Is right.
You're right.
I well remember us struggling trying to get a podcast. It was your idea, and you wanted to do it, and I was going to come to your house, and we were going to do it. And you know what happened?
Yeah, COVID.
COVID, yeah, COVID hit and
It
said,
was
no,
it was March of I think it was March of
2020.
2020 or February 2020 when we first started talking about it.
It
And
was.
yeah, you're right. We were just going to do because I was doing some audio podcasts at the time, a couple of other things, and I said it'd be cool to do one for about Oak Ridge history and things that we don't talk very much about. And then the pandemic hit, and you suggested we just do it through Zoom, and that's worked out pretty well because we've been able to have special guests just like we do today from all over the country and around the world
We have literally.
to be our guests. So
Yeah. And by the way, I just returned from a trip to Greece, and one of the tour guides that gave us a tour has agreed to be on a podcast or a video cast with us. So now the only connection to Oak Ridge is going to be that I met him. Okay.
yeah, sure, I understand.
But he is a character, and I want to have him on here and let him talk about some history that's far older than Oak Ridge history. But I think it'll be fun. Anyway, we've done this 100 times now, and just have to mention, Keith, that you and I never started out thinking that it would go this long, nor that we would have as much success as we've had. But I do want to recognize that the East Tennessee Historical Society gave us an award for history and media. I was proud for us to get that, but I think it does recognize that what we're doing has value. The interviews that we conduct and the people like we have on here today, we've got Alan Carr with us and Brye Steeves from Los Alamos National Laboratory, and I'm glad to have them here. And I must say that one of the reasons that I suggested to you that we have Alan on, and of course, glad for him to bring Brye with him too, but he was for a long while the person that had the most views of any of our hidden history episodes.
Yeah, he's our celebrity guest.
Yeah, he is.
Alan
He's
is
our
our
celebrity
celebrity
guest.
guest.
So we thought we would bring him back on and celebrate our 100th episode with having Alan. And so we've done that. Now, Alan and Brye have a new book that they're going to be talking about. So let's just get started. And Alan, we'll let you kick it off if you will. And if you want to do anything more to introduce Brye and yourself, then please do. I mean, you and I are good friends, but I don't know a lot about what you and Brye are doing now. So feel free to add to that, okay?
Oh, hey, Ray, Keith, it's great to be back. I am a little disappointed to hear that apparently I've been displaced, but that's why I brought backup today.
Yeah,
a dear friend of mine, Brye Steeves. So at Los Alamos, we have an incredible repository of documents, millions of documents that are still actively used by multiple programs at the laboratory. And, big staff now. We've got dozens. I think we've got approximately 60 digitizers. There's another full-time historian, Nick Lewis, who I believe has been on Hidden History. Other people who are capable of writing history and help us out with things like that. Librarians, the list goes on and on. It's a remarkable place. And of course, it needs a remarkable leader, and that's Brye. Brye is our director. We've got an awesome management team. I mean, we really do. And these are the good old days for me, my friend. Because for many years, no complaints. You kind of scrape along. A historian at a scientific institution, but the lab was always good enough to have me. But to be where we are now it's really been a great time. And I've got to do a lot more history in the past 5 years than I had in the previous 15. And this book is, I think, kind of representative of that. And so I want to invite Brye to jump into the conversation. I've had the privilege of being here in the past, been the historian for 20 years at Los Alamos. But Brye's got an incredible history herself, and I'll turn it over to her.
Thanks, Alan. Ray, Keith, thank you so much for having both of us. It's an honor to be here, especially given that it's your 100th episode. So as Alan mentioned, we are partners in actually probably the vast majority of what I do for the NSRC. So I always tell people I'm Alan Carr's sidekick, and that very much sort of frames it for them. But as Alan mentioned, we have an incredible repository, right? It's millions and millions and millions of media materials in literally every format that you can imagine. And it dates back to the early 1940s, the beginning of the nuclear enterprise. Our repository, what is today the National Security Research Center, started as J. Robert Oppenheimer's Technical Wartime Library. So here we are 80 some years later, and we are stewards of this incredible amount of information. And I kind of think of it in two buckets, right? Information is our job, and we have two main buckets. We have our classified weapons data. This is very much active use materials, and we are partnering with Laureate researchers, physicists, engineers, scientists across the national, the security enterprise. And then we have our unclassified information, and information is still our business, right? And so it's very much our duty to share that as well. And that's where Alan comes in, and a lot of my efforts as well. Outreach, right? And so this book that we're going to talk about today, the Nobel Laureates of Los Alamos during the Manhattan Project era, it's really just sort of one example of a lot of efforts that we do to help educate the public, right? We're inherently a library, and it is our duty to share this information. We do that in a lot of ways, having Alan on a podcast like yours. We have our own podcast. Alan is constantly giving presentations, talks, tours, joining various meetings for context, these types of things. We do a magazine, we have an annual magazine, and we have a couple other books in the works as well. And really it's just a bunch of different ways to help us achieve this goal of information dissemination.
That sounds really good, and I'm proud you're doing it. I mean, it is an amazing resource that you've made available there, and the fact that, by the way, there are other things that you all are doing as well, and I'm fortunate enough to be involved in some of them. In fact, Alan, if we had not had a miscue on the tour this week, we would be at the Nevada test site. Is that correct?
We've been juggling trips to Nevada. Of course, the site is a very active part of our complex, which is at the heart of nuclear deterrence and national security. It's a very busy place, and Ray, I'm really looking forward to getting out there with you eventually. It's all over you. Yeah, and that's part of what we try and bring from the NSRC to our staff, the wider laboratory staff, the complex, and some of our stakeholders from beyond Los Alamos. Part of the education piece to really understand the technology that we're working with, and that's what we do. We take as historians. We take pictures, we take raw data, we take all of these things, and we turn them into a story that hopefully educates and inspires people. And these trips to Nevada are certainly a part of that. So hopefully, we'll get that back on the calendar.
Yeah, I'm committed to do it whenever you schedule it. I'll be a part of it and be glad to. I want to tell you just a real quick little story about the time that I visited out at the test site. Oh, it's a number of years ago. We were at the Sedan crater, the huge hole in the ground. And there was a truck parked up on the ridge, up on the high part, just, and I don't remember directions, but just away from the crater there. And I told the person giving me the tour, I said, let's drive up this road toward that truck until he moves. When he moves, we'll turn around and leave. And we did that, and we got up not real close, just about halfway up the hill, and he started his truck up. Now, you know what's on the other side of the hill from Sedan Crater, Area
No.
51.
Oh, that hill, right?
We won't be visiting there. I understand that, but I thought that was fun. He told me before we went up there, he said, now that's Area 51 across the ridge. They won't let us go over there. And I said, well, let's go until they start their truck up. Anyway, I'm sorry to taking you off on the wrong track. I would ask Brye one more question. This information, the unclassified portion, is available online. How much of it can people access through a web connection?
I think that really just depends on what they're after. I mean, if it's unclassified, we're always happy to share it. We're really trying to do our part to get it to people, right? Be it a book, a poster, a collection of photographs, our Oppenheimer documentary. So the idea is that we are packaging it up, offering historical interpretation from Alan or one of our other staff members, and putting it in a very easily accessible vehicle, if you will, with some context, you know, why this matters, why this is important. And if you want more, you know, you can go here, here, and here. So we do have our products, anything that's unclassified, you know, our products, be it books, podcasts, magazine, or otherwise. Yes, all of that is available on lanel.gov, our external website. And then if we do have more kind of things that are in the one-off category, someone, for example, would like a photograph of a particular shot or something like that, test shot, they can always contact the repository, and we would be happy to, you know, to get them those things. So yes, it is available.
It's very good, and that's an interesting connection, because I know that there are people who see photographs or want a good image of a particular shot, and I don't know how many you have, but you have a load of photographs that can be shared with people, and I'm really
millions.
Proud. Yes.
Yeah, millions. We also, you know, so we do get requests from individuals all the time. Often people with connections, you know, from family members or a grandfather or father, whatever the case may be, was a Lanel employee at some point, and they're trying to track down information or related work. But we also field, I would say, almost daily requests from other media, and it could be domestically or internationally, you know, folks making their own documentaries or working on various projects, and they reach out to us all the time, and we're happy to do that, right? It makes sense for us. We have a team of people that join Alan and I doing these types of things, but if there's someone else we can give a handful of photos to, or an audio clip, or whatever the case may be, and then they're disseminating it, that of course helps us, right? Ensure that our information is reaching the broadest audience possible. So a lot of times you'll see our artifacts, our historical media elsewhere, and we're happy to have those things featured in that way. More people see it.
I understand, and I agree with you. The more we can get that out for the general public to be aware of what has happened in our history, the better they understand. And I think that's important. Okay, Alan, tell us about the book.
It's for me, it's kind of a dream come true. And some of those other products that Brye hinted at that are going to be coming out in future months and years, those are too. When I started at the laboratory back in 2003, there was a web page that was under construction, and one of the pages featured the Nobel laureates of the lab. Now, first, I want to take this point to make a distinction. 18 Nobel laureates were officially affiliated with Los Alamos during the Manhattan Project era. One of them won the Nobel Prize for work done on company time, and that was Frederick Reines. The rest of them had either won their Nobel Prize already, the largest number of them will go on after World War II to win their prizes. You know, a lot of young scientists at the laboratory. So we don't want to give the impression, you know, there's incredible science that goes on at Los Alamos. We are and have always been primarily a national security science institution, and most most Nobel Prizes are awarded for basic science and different things like that instead. So what we wanted to do is, you know, with the webpage back then, was just kind of demonstrate pedigree and you know, all these bright people who had contributed during the war. And it was kind of a controversial page for this reason. You know, nobody wanted to falsely advertise that, you know, that we've got 18 people who did Nobel-winning science during World War II. You know, so anyway, it kind of evaporated. But I thought, you know, we did have 18 Nobel laureates getting paid by the laboratory in this concentrated amount of time, and all of these people have incredible stories. It's not just the incredible science, but they've got incredible stories to go along with it. And you know, I thought it would be neat to share that in some way. Now, a book is a great way to do it, but there was a problem for years and years and years, and that is that it was, you know, kind of just me. Our staff for a long time was not very extensive.
Right.
And I should say that the people that we've had over the years have been great, but there's just not been a lot of us. You know, we've during my career, we've usually had like maybe 2 archivists, maybe. The collections that now make up the National Security Research Center, so many of them were brought in from different places at the laboratory, brought together, put under one roof. That didn't exist before. You just had these bits and pieces where we didn't really communicate very well. Now we're all under the same umbrella, which Brye is responsible for. And we have staffed up, and we have brought in all those people I told you about before. Yeah. You know, certified librarians, certified archivists, people who have a lot of training experience, come from other incredible repositories as well, come from outstanding graduate programs, things like that. You again, you met Nick Lewis, Dr. Nick Lewis, who is a phenomenal historian. You know, I tell people I'm the senior historian of the lab. Nick's the better historian of the lab. You know, because of all the commitments that we have, and because we had such a small staff for years and years, I couldn't write a book. We had other things to do, like vaults and escort electricians and things like that. Things that you have to do that nobody ever thinks about before, that make the world go around, make our world go around. So we've got a lot of information. We've got great stories, and we have this big team of people who write well and know how to put these pieces together. So the thing that I enjoy, the single thing I enjoy most about the book, is that all my friends wrote it, you know, and that's special to me. I think, and I'm, you know, I want to give it back to Brye in a second, because I'm, you know, that's kind of my perspective going back for 20 years. It's a lovely book. It is designed by our friend Paul Jomek. It has a tone in it from a design standpoint that is supposed to be, and does, I think, engage a huge audience. Not just people who you know, are maybe they're theoretical physicists. We wanted a theoretical physicist to get some real value out of this book. We wanted kids that are just getting interested in STEM, maybe in junior high and high school, to be able to take, you know, really get into this book as well. And so the basic format for each biography is that you will get some biographical information for each Nobel laureate. We will talk about, and this may be the best, well, I say the best, the most valuable new contribution to the field. We do talk about what they did at Los Alamos, and we do it in language that is accessible to all. We had a lot of scientists that we worked with who provided peer review, who helped us translate you know, old charts and old reports into understandable language for all. You're going to get that. We're going to try and offer an explanation of their Nobel-winning science that is accessible to all as well. And then we're going to talk about kind of what happened to them, what they were about. And that's the basic formula. Heavily illustrated, as I think Brye's going to give you a preview of in a moment. Lots of pictures, lots of things from our collections, lots of things from beyond our collection that we licensed to bring into this book. But it's a beautiful book. I think it's an inspiring book. It has some new contributions to the literature in it. And so I just could not be more pleased. It's a dream come true, and the reality is better than anything I could have dreamed of.
Excellent.
Alan, when will it be available for the general public to have?
This is a great segue to Brye,
Okay.
because Brye is the expert on that. And I tell you, Keith, I don't think you're going to get a satisfying answer, but it's not Brye's fault.
Okay. All right.
Keith, that is an excellent question, and I think a reasonable one. I will give you an honest answer, and that's soon. So I'm sorry, I can't be more specific than that. I actually did check with the folks on that side, the administrative side of the book, just yesterday, and they said soon. So we have partnered with Texas A&M University, which I think Alan has a strong affinity for. And so we have a nice partnership, a nice relationship with them. They have a press, and that's who we're working with. And so essentially, the National Security Research Center, our organization, our role is, of course, the content creation, but we are not, we are not a print and press. We are not a bookseller. And so we hand it over to Tamu Press and let them take it from there. And of course, it takes time, and there's the logistics, the administrative aspects of it. And so those folks are working through all of that, and we are told very soon it will be available. We do have some sample copies that we've been able to print and have, just for our staff to kind of do early reviews and that type of thing. And then, of course, show our leadership, our management, here's what's coming. But I would think very soon, and we would be happy to update you when we have a more concrete answer.
And Brye, I want to say really quickly, I am a Texas Tech Red Raider. Okay, guns up.
I know.
But Texas Tech is a couple things. First of all, they're part of the laboratory contract. The laboratory is run by a nonprofit conglomerate. Texas A&M is part of that. And for a long time, it hurt me to say this as a Red Raider, but Texas A&M is it's an incredible system. It is. I mean, the tradition, what they bring to the table. As our partners at Los Alamos, Brye, I think you'll agree. I mean, they're very interested, very sincerely interested in contributing to the national security of our country as part of their mission. And they have a great printing press. So, I mean, it's really
absolutely, yes.
It's a perfect partnership. It really is.
They're a venerable partner as well as a rival to some of our staff, namely Alan. But yes, we are in conversations with them about some forthcoming projects. So, and maybe this is something that Alan would want to touch on a little bit later down the road here. But we are working on a book on the Trinity test. And it's pretty exciting. It's looking good, and our hope is that it will be released for the 80th anniversary of the test, which is next July, so July of 2025.
That'll be an exciting book to see as well, because I know you've got extensive information about it that probably has never been shared with the public. That I think
you're right.
Interest, yes, I do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, don't get me started on Trinity, Ray, because
I know. I've heard your talk on Trinity, and you can go on for a long while.
We'll come back and see you next year, yes. Maybe this time next year, and tell you all about it. It is going to be a great book. I mean, most of it is finished. Of course, the publication process takes a long time. Yeah. But like the Nobel Laureates book, I mean, it exists. Now, these are not just things that we'd like to do this. They exist, and they exist because of the hard work of a lot of people. And so you're going to see these. And like Brye said, hopefully Nobel Laureates soon, because it's a great book.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. And you are now on the schedule for another episode just prior to the 80th anniversary of the Trinity test.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Well, we've waited and waited, Brye. Show us the book.
I will show you the copy that I have.
Wait a minute.
Is
It's
it a
going to be
little?
hard. It's going to be hard for us to get it in focus with your background blurred, unfortunately. Alan,
I've got one. I've got one too, Brye, if you want me to.
Okay.
Yeah, get it.
Maybe that would be better to.
Let's see.
And while Alan's grabbing that, I can just offer a few details. As Alan mentioned, there are 18 laureates included in the book. Each laureate has a chapter. And then we also have a few chapters in there just for some nice context. So Ray, Keith, I don't know if you were aware, but Oppenheimer never won a Nobel Prize. I think this is shocking to people, right? He is probably the most famous scientist ever, but not a Nobel laureate. And so we have a chapter in there, just a little short snippet on him. Why didn't he win a prize? We have other just sort of contextual elements in there, like a nice timeline, setting the scene. Of course, this is wartime conditions and reminding people, what that was like. So that's kind of woven in throughout these chapters of each of the laureates. And then, like Alan mentioned, these are people, and I think people like to read about people, and so that's very much how each chapter is approached. Who is this person? What made him or her tick? And then touching on the science, but in as relatable as we could have possibly done. As Alan mentioned, we talked with our scientists today at the lab just to get a sense of the layman's terms, I suppose. What does this mean? What effects did this have? Why was this important? Why was this worthy of a Nobel Prize? So hopefully we have a lot of context in there as well. And then, as you can see, this is an amazing opportunity to show a lot of the photographs that we have in our collections. One of our graphic designers on staff, he illustrated each of the laureates. So we have original illustrations in there too.
I noticed when Alan held up Niels Bohr, and there's Richard Feynman. Feynman is my favorite scientist of all time, but it was a young Niels Bohr that is illustrated there. But I
was Niels Bohr's biographer. I just wrote one, and fascinating story there, isn't it?
It is.
For Feynman, I mean, it's just as you go through here, it's these are going to be just loaded with pictures and documents. Here's Fermi there as well. You can see you'll see photographs of each Nobel laureate. That's his McKibben card, the little cards that Dorothy McKibben made as they came to Los Alamos.
Oh, how neat! That's good. Yeah,
we'll have those. Here's his badge photo, and actually, if you look at, I'll try and get this on the screen. This badge photo may look a little bit different than badge photos that you've seen released from Los Alamos before. Now, the thing is, those photos that have been released before, those were made from the original hard copy photograph that we have.
Right.
The issue is that over the years, at one point somebody decided, hey, we should put their names on the photos. And so they scotch taped names. That's usually what you see in books and in movies and things like that. We have the entire collection of photographs professionally cleaned up. We did not alter them. We just cleaned them up. And to remove, scotch tape from, I think, around 1,200 badge photos. And, when chemicals and other things had accumulated on there, you're talking about, removing that. We had a professional specialist to clean up each of the images. Now, the other thing is that our friend, Brye and our friend Riz Ali, who is also Brye's predecessor as the director of the NSRC, he is also a professional image restorer. I don't know what the proper title is. When Riz watches this, he'll go, "What did he just call me?"
Photo editor.
Photo editor. That's
photo editor.
Yeah.
There.
Photo improvement guy. We wanted the images to look like they did when they were produced, the way that they were intended to look. because, you know, you can show a Scotch tape image, but that's the way that it looked in 1980 or something like that. We really wanted to give readers, when it came to what they're going to see in here, you know, in terms of the imagery, this is the way it's supposed to look like. This is the way that it was created in the first place. And so, so anyway, that's why you get, you know, these pretty stunning, well, I'm doing a not stunning job of showing it on camera, but I think that readers will be pleased to see the photos as they originally looked. And of course,
I like they're good and clear and clean images, but I also like the fact that you've upsized them to where they're larger than a badge photo, and
yes.
that's good. Yeah,
absolutely.
Very good.
Well, that's going to be a fascinating, and it's beautiful looking. The layout, design, it looks very reader friendly. So yeah,
that's what we wanted to do. And you know, speaking of reader friendly, Keith, just to go back to one point I made quickly a while ago, one thing we don't have a shortage of at Los Alamos are scientists. We've got scientists who have been doing this for a long time, very senior people that have been in their fields, and several of them were very kind to provide peer review. We really wanted this, you know, on the one hand, we very much, it has to be technically correct.
Right.
And so we relied on our partners to help us with that. There's no such thing as a perfect book. You know, I mean, I'm sure one of the viewers will watch, they'll go buy the book when it's available and say, well, you know, but this is a very sound book, if you will. And the other thing, as I mentioned before, is, you know, if you're in high school, you know, Nobel Prizes are not really handed out for simple, straightforward things. They are handed out for real discoveries, complex, unknown things. And we wanted, you know, the way that I put it is science is not something that's unreachable by most people. It's not something that's not understandable. It's just a different language. And, you know, most of us, you know, I don't have a technical background. You know, I'm a trained historian. My background's in the early Soviet military, way back once upon a time, studying it, I should say. When you have these really good scientists, some of them are what I call technical translators. They can take those concepts and they can translate them into a language that all of us can appreciate. We really wanted to do that with our book, and I think that we accomplished it. And so hopefully we can, one of the things we want to do is get younger people excited about science. We want to get people at the laboratory excited about the technical heritage of our institution. And when you asked Brye earlier about making information accessible, this is one of the many reasons or many ways that we do it. Right. And we have always done that. We're proud of making our story available to the public. I think that if you look at all my books are over here, I think that and you can see Ray's books, I bet if you look in a pretty hefty percentage of those books, if you look at the acknowledgments, you will see Lanel Archives, maybe in some of the newer ones, NSRC, you'll see the individual names of some of our archivists that have worked with us, historians, my predecessor, Roger Mead. We've always done that, and we're taking it up a notch in sharing our information with the public. They paid for it, and so we are proud to be able to do this for, well, kind of everybody who's interested.
Well, there's a couple of good points. It is taxpayer money that we're using here, and I think that's appropriate to feed some of that back to it in the method that you're doing. And I applaud your use of technical scientific people who are able to translate scientific information into common everyday language that even us old folks as well as high school can understand. It's not every scientist that can do that.
That's right. It's rare.
Yeah, the ones who can do it well. And when you find one of those unusually gifted scientists that can take the scientific information and convey it, sometimes, many times in storytelling format, but can convey it in such a way that it's comprehensible and understandable by the general public, that's a jewel. And I know you've worked hard to do that in this book, and I'm glad to see that.
Ray, if I could make a comment, just sort of piggybacking off of that, absolutely, that was our goal, right? Making science accessible. What does this mean? Why is this important? You know, hopefully we were able to explain that, as Alan mentioned, with the help of Lano's scientists today. But I think a lot of what makes that successful in this book is that it's very much framed by the people behind the science. I mean, the book is very, very entertaining. You had mentioned that Richard Feynman is one of your favorite scientists, mine too. And I think he's a really good example of sort of that approach, that idea, that strategy, if you will, to make the science entertaining. So we're telling you, you know, this is what Feynman did, and this is why he won a Nobel Prize, and why that science is important, groundbreaking, and all these things. But we're also telling you about Richard Feynman. Presumably one of the reasons why you like him, Ray, is because he was sort of known as this jokester, prankster. And,
Yes.
and I think through just anecdotes, you know, I mean, all of this is very much documented as historical fact. But, you know, Feynman was just such a character, right? So he was, you know, sneaking in and out through a hole in the fence and tricking the security guards. You know, he and his wife would write letters back and forth, and they would write them in code, and it of course frustrated the security, and they would say, you tell your wife to, you know, to stop with the puzzles, you know, just write you a normal letter, and these types of things. An anecdote came out too through the research. Feynman's wife was actually ill, and she ended up passing away just shortly before the Trinity test. It's very, very tragic. But Feynman would go from Los Alamos to Albuquerque as often as he could to, you know, of course, visit her in the hospital while still being able to work, you know, up on the hill. And it turns out he didn't have a car. And so he would just sort of bum rides off anyone he could, and often he would hitchhike. But it turns out one of the people who had given him rides down to the hospital in Albuquerque was later confirmed to be a spy. So just lots of little things like that, just fascinating details really emerge, both sort of amusing and then, you know, just kind of heartbreaking a little bit, you know, be it the passing of Feynman's wife. Alan probably could expand a little bit on the Boers, their story, father and son, and sort of fleeing, you know, Nazi persecution and ending up in the United States and joining the Manhattan Project to, you know, to try to stop, help end World War II. These types of very dramatic stories, but entertaining nonetheless, I suppose. And I think that strategy of making the science accessible, but making the scientist a person and telling his or her story also really helps with, you know, the educational portion of that, getting that out there, because then it's memorable and it's interesting.
I agree with you. I will tell you one story about Feynman and Y-12. He was sent here by Oppenheimer to tell Tennessee Eastman not to store their uranium on either side of a concrete block wall. He knew, and Oppenheimer knew, that neutrons didn't care about concrete block walls. They'd go right through them. But Tennessee Eastman didn't have a clue what they were really handling. So he told them to be safe, just don't stack it so close together. Oh, man, but that's
So
good.
many great stories.
Yeah.
You know, I would, if we do have a minute, because
Yeah.
well, Keith can edit this out, right?
Oh, we don't edit it.
Don't edit.
I did want to mention, you know, as Brye alluded to, not only did Niels Bohr win a prize, but so did his son. And a lot of people don't know anything about his son. Originally, I wanted to write both of their biographies, and I didn't have time. And so this is when we went to, so we have people on our staff who had been working on these. We also have a pool of consultants who are retired from the laboratory. One of them is, I believe, your friend, and certainly mine, Ellen McGee. So
Yeah.
Ellen worked at the laboratory as a historian for many years. She wrote the biography of Bohr's son, who I call Bohr Jr. Now, the first research question is, how do you pronounce his name correctly? And so she had to look into that. So to us, it looks like Augie, A-A-G-E, Augie Bohr, but that's not how you actually say it. And we want to get things like, you don't get pronunciation in the book, but when we talk about it, she spent time looking into that. It's pronounced, I believe, properly, Oha, Oha. It's kind of, it's not a natural sound for those of us. And you have in the two Bohrs kind of opposite extremes when you're talking about a research project. The issue with Niels Bohr is that there's so much material out there.
Yeah.
How do you choose which sources that you're going to use and put it all into about a 3,000 word? How do you summarize a life like that in 3,000 words with all these sources? So that was my challenge with Bohr, and some of the challenges. That was the same challenge for many of our other authors. And I had fun putting it together. And I tried to mix some of the things that you would expect, some of the famous documents and things that he wrote, along with things that you've never seen before. For instance, in the book, you'll see some of his view graphs from a lecture that he gave at the lab in 1944. You won't see things like that anywhere else. For Oha, his son, I mean, for somebody who won the Nobel Prize, there's very, very little about him out there. And so Ellen was able to take these fragments that she found both in our repository, fragments that she found in oral histories and other documents from other places, and put them together to tell his story. And so, his story, how can there not be more out there? And so that's going to be one of the original contributions that this book will make, is his story should have been told long ago. Now it will be told, and Ellen did a wonderful job doing it.
And I'm sure she would. Ellen is a tremendous historian. She gave me my tour of all of the Manhattan Project National Historical Park sites at Los Alamos a number of years ago. And yes, we've been in contact. In fact, you remind me, she's someone we should get on our video cast too. And
absolutely.
Absolutely.
She's a great conversation.
Yes, she is.
She's a good storyteller. Yep.
Yes, she is. I've enjoyed knowing her, and I'm remiss in not already having her on here. So Keith, we'll add her to our list.
That sounds good. All right.
Anything else you guys want to share with us about it? I'm really anxious to get a copy of this book. So I'm a little frustrated.
Me too.
One and I don't.
I will tack on, because I know that we're about out of time now. I will tack on, because I got to write on Bohr, another source that some of your listeners may be interested in. There's these great stories about how Bohr fled successfully, thank goodness, Denmark, kind of with essentially no time left from the Nazis, escaped to Sweden and the UK, came to the United States. There are different accounts of that. The account I chose to use for my source in talking about Bohr's escape was Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer came back to Los Alamos in, I believe, 1964, and gave a speech on Niels Bohr. And he tells the story of how he went to Sweden and then got into the bomb bay of a British Mosquito fighter bomber and flew to the UK, passed out because he didn't have his oxygen mask on, I believe, properly, fortunately survived. But that speech is cited here. And you can see it, or you can hear it at least. A recording was made of the complete speech, and you can see that at my YouTube channel. It's another, that channel is something I don't make money off of. It's another platform that we use to get information to the public. And there's 60 or 70 videos on there now. So if you want to hear Oppenheimer lecture on the life of Niels Bohr, that source was used in this book, and it can be heard on the YouTube channel. So, it's just, I'm so grateful that this materialized. We mentioned Riz Ali earlier. He was a big proponent of getting this book done. Brye was a big proponent of making sure it was done right. And she's brought it to the finish line just about. And offered a written contribution as well, talking about Oppenheimer. And that's a great story too. Why Oppenheimer didn't win the Nobel Prize. He may have gotten closer if he lived longer. But this really was a labor of love. So grateful for everybody that we've mentioned today and that we've not mentioned today, because there's a lot of people we didn't get to. If you buy the book, read the acknowledgement section. definitely read that and find out the people who made it a possibility.
I want to reinforce something you said, and I'm again remiss in not having promoted this more. Your YouTube channel is a wealth of excellent material that is easily, I mean, you just get on YouTube and search on Alan Carr, and you're going to get a whole resource full of videos and excellent presentations that you put up. And
I should say, I have to say there, Ray, that if you just go to YouTube and Google Alan Carr,
oh, you get the wrong one.
Keith knows where I'm going.
I know where you're going.
As it turns out, there's another Alan Carr. But I think if you do Alan Carr historian or
Historian,
Alan Carr Alamos, it'll take you there. Other Alan Carr's interesting as well, but the laboratory has produced so many cool things over the years. And we used to just kind of hand out DVDs. Remember those days?
I do remember
transfer.
And
we just started kind of uploading the greatest hits to the YouTube channel there. So there's a lot of really neat things on a wide variety of topics. None of it's mine. It's just stuff that I knew about. And you know, our team made it. We ran it through the public release process, put it up there. And again, I don't make any money off of it. What I enjoy is just seeing those views, just to know that people are watching it, and hopefully it's a nice part of their day, and inspires them to do something really great in STEM would be I would say by extension of that, hopefully. But anyway, it's there.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you clarified that we need to say historian or Los Alamos or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I have the same problem with Ray Smith. You can imagine how many Ray Smiths are out there on. Sometimes it's hard for me to even find my own channel. But
we're both of a good species, you know. There are other ones out there, but you want to get the right one for this. So
absolutely. Well, it's been a delight to have you all on today. It really has.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Ray, before we leave, do you have access? Because I've got a story real quick that I want to tell.
Okay.
You have access to a photograph of the moon box?
I do, absolutely.
Okay. While you're pulling that up, you know, I'm a film guy. And you know, I've made films my whole career. And now I teach, you know, filmmaking. And so I try to stay current on the things that are happening in the entertainment industry. And Jerry Seinfeld, of course, everybody knows Jerry Seinfeld. I asked my high school students this week if they knew who Jerry Seinfeld was, and they said no. And I felt so old. So, but anyway, so Jerry Seinfeld, he has a new movie that I think comes out on Netflix today. And the movie is called Frosted. And it is about the Kellogg and Post companies that are coming out. It's about the creation of the Pop-Tart. Okay. So I have not watched this movie yet. And I think it takes place, you know, in the 60s. It's a comedy, it's a farce. There's nothing probably really historically accurate about it. But as I want to watch the movie this weekend. So I was watching the trailer this morning, and there's a scene in the trailer where they reveal the first Pop-Tarts and they open the moon box to reveal the Pop-Tarts.
No.
At least that's what it looked like to me. It was a shiny silver box that, you know, looked like it was the moon box, just like that. So, so if you watch Frosted on Netflix anytime, you know, keep an eye open for the moon box that will contain the Pop-Tarts.
Oh my goodness! You can't ever tell where them moon boxes are going to show up.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And for those, and most people that are watching this will know, you know, the moon box was machined here in Oak Ridge, you know, by Y12 out of pure aluminum, I guess.
Yes.
You know,
It took several weeks to do that, so there wouldn't be any seams.
Exactly.
If we were doing it today, Keith, we would just 3D print it in a couple hours.
Of course, exactly. All right. Well, I wanted to tell the story. So if you're watching Frosted, keep an eye out for the moon box.
Excellent. Very good. Oh, let's talk a little bit about what's coming up. We've got a schedule that's hard to keep, and we've got other things going on, but we've got folks in the queue like Clifton Truman Daniel, President Truman's grandson, is coming back. And I gave a tour not too long ago to a man, Greg Crosby, and he's going to be on for us. Now, his emphasis is going to be a little different. His emphasis is on what is happening to our mind because we are spending so much time on our iPhones and in social media and interacting with not a realistic world, not reality, but a world that we've created in our interactions with our phone. And just think about it a minute. What's the first thing you do when you get up every morning? It don't take long to get that phone in your hand, I guarantee you. And how much time are you spending with it, and what's it doing to your mind? It's an amazing fella. When COVID first came out, China had him to come and to help their therapist train on how to deal with the impact of isolation on people. So he's going to be interesting to have. But again, for our viewers, just be patient with us over the next few weeks. We may have to shift times and dates, but we will still be bringing our episodes to you. And oh, by the way, Keith, this is the 100th episode of Hidden History, Stories from the Secret City. And
right.
Alan Carr is out to retake the lead in the most views.
Got my friends.
And with Brye's help, he's a sure winner. It'll happen.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for being with us this morning. We really appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah.
Happy 100th.
All right. And folks, thank you for watching. We'll be back in another couple of 3 weeks with another episode of Hidden History.